Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ChesterBelloc Hour, brought to you by your affable hosts, Caleb and Connor. Sit back, relax, and join us for an enchanting journey through the wit and wisdom of Chesterton and Belloc. Stay tuned.
And we're live. We're live after a 3 months hiatus. We're back. We're only probably back for one episode, maybe two, and we're back on the hiatus. Unfortunately, Connor could not make it today. He is busy having a wife and a life and actually doing things. But thankfully, I got some great guys here to fill in the spots. I got Gustavo and I got Perkio. Boys, how you doing?
Doing just fine, Caleb. Thanks for inviting me. For those who don't know us, I guess you should watch the poetry corners. They are severely underrated. So that's where we have been on this last couple of months. But I'm excited to be part of the ChesterBelloc Hour now for the first time. I know it's a pretty big shoes to fill in. Just think the spot of Connor, who is such a great host, but also by talking about Chesterton and Belloc, who are phenomenal authors and really the top notch of what we had in the 20th century. And I'm forever grateful for Caleb for being such an outspoken advocate for them, because he basically introduced me to Belloc, who I had no prior knowledge of. I was aware of Chesterton, but he really introduced me to Belloc, and I have gotten very interested in ever since. So I'm very excited and I'm very thankful to be here, and I hope you have a great episode.
Wonderful. Perkio, anything you want to say?
Happy to be here too. I pretty much the same thing. You kind of introduced me to a lot of stuff to do with both of them, actually. I mean, I'd heard G.K. Chesterton's name before, but I didn't know anything about him until I started talking to y'all. And it's been a great thing. They're very good writers.
Yeah, the Chesterton and Belloc, again, I say it every episode, but I'm going to continue to say it. Everyone knows Chesterton, mainly because of how much of an influence he had on C.S. Lewis. But everyone kind of ignores Belloc, who was the biggest influence on G.K. Chesterton. And it's a weird saying, because everyone loves Chesterton. Everyone knows Chesterton's prose, his poetry, his essays, chasing after one's hat, his sayings. But Belloc, he brings what Chesterton is kind of like he'd dance around a point, have some fun. Belloc just hits you with a hammer. It's very blunt. It's very blunt prose, very direct, and that's what I appreciate about Belloc. And except for his poetry, when he gets a little bit more sly, we'll say. He gets a little bit more sly with his poetry. But yeah, so this will be fun. I was thinking I'll open up with the first forgot drinks. Is anybody besides me drinking tonight?
No, unfortunately, no.
That's one down. Perkio?
I was drinking some tea, but I can't pace myself at all, so I finished it already.
Tea. Okay. Well, I am sitting here with a delicious iced vanilla berry vodka Red Bull. Would not have been fancy tonight. I wanted to have some Japanese plum wine, but I didn't have time to go by the store and grab it after work. So we're making do with just the Red Bull and vodka tonight. Well, we'll go into the first poem. This is Fatigue by G.K. Chesterton. I mean, HILAIRE Belloc. Sorry, let me get the screenshot up here. Okay, Fatigue by HILAIRE Belloc. I'm tired of love. I'm still more tired of rhyme, but money gives me pleasure all the time. It's such a short and simple poem, but I do love it. Knowing Belloc's history, how most of what he was writing just for money. Later in his life, he called most of his work hack work. He was constantly writing just to get by because he couldn't make it as a full-time poet, and he would routinely blame that on the Puritans in England for not permitting poetry to be a full-time art. But it's such a fun and simple poem. You know, it's very much on the grind, bag chasing, get that money. Very modern.
What was the thing you called? Like you renamed it?
bag chasing.
But yeah, he had. I've just noticed. This is just the vibe I get from it. Belloc had much more aura than Chesterton did. Like they both had it, but he had like he seemed like a much more serious person, like more melancholic.
I think that's mainly because it's two things. One, Belloc loves a hiker. He loved to walk. He'd walked from France all the way down to Rome. He walked across the Pyrenees. He walked across the Alps. He was a big fan of walking tours. He was a sailor. He had his own ship, the Nona, which he would sail out alone. And so he was much more of a man of adventure. Also, he did serve in the French artillery for, I think, 3 or 4 years, but not during any of the major wars. It was kind of following the Franco-Prussian War. So he had a bit more lived experience and a lot more tragedy in his life. Chesterton had a very, I'm not going to say he didn't have tragedy in his life, but he didn't seem to have the same. Chesterton made adventures out of everyday life. Belloc actually went on adventures, is I would say the difference. That permits Belloc to have a bit more aura.
Well, about the poem, I initially thought that Belloc was talking about materialism and all of that, but then I realized that he's actually just talking about everyday activity. I think it's a very spontaneous reaction that he had, and that's pretty much relatable to everyone who does any sort of modern job, and especially if you do any amount of intellectual activity or an office job or something like that, which eventually becomes heavily mentally draining. And we think of poetry as this nice art to be in, and as you Caleb mentioned, we kind of idealize it a little bit, just thinking it's just fun and games about writing poetry all day. But when you are immersed in this commercial logic, the money really becomes everything you're looking forward. And I don't think it's controversial to say that most people hate their jobs nowadays, and even people who have supposedly nice jobs are mostly in there counting their hours until they can go home, I guess. There are those privileged few nowadays who can say they enjoy their jobs, but I think this is becoming an increasingly endangered minority.
Yes, and there's a lot to say about that we will probably get into when we record our next Beyond Solhan episode.
Yeah, you guys have that to look forward to.
Now, one of the things. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I've heard that the I can't remember where I heard this from, but he was like talking about like art, any kind of artistic thing, hobby or something like that. That is a terrible idea to ever try to, or in most cases, is a bad idea to try to make money off of it, because it's just going to ruin it for you, and you're not going to see it the same way you did, because you're not doing it for the same reason you were before.
Yeah, once you can modify the hobby into a thing that feeds into your how would I put it? The achievement subject cannot persist in leisure. He has to commodify leisure into these into the scheme of constant achievements, which leads to burnout. Where even your hobbies are now commodified into the scheme, so even your leisure has been economized into work.
You're always on that grind, essentially, even when you're taking a break.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, listen, I get that. My hobby has been audiobooks and reading. And once I started the podcast, it was great for a while. But then it got to a point where I'm like, man, I'm just reading books to justify having the podcast, or I'm podcasting to justify reading the books. Which is, it kind of just removed the fun of both of them, which is why the podcast has kind of slowed down a bit as I've taken a step back, just to actually enjoy the hobby instead of trying to. Well, how do I feed into the viewers? How do I catch the algorithm just right where my videos get more than 12 views? At this point, I'm happy with one view. I get one view. I'm like, oh, cool. One guy watched this. That's pretty cool. I would do this with no views because it's just fun. The moment you have to remove you have to actively try to resist the desire to commodify everything.
Yeah, and I think it talks a lot about the theme of fatigue that he's exploring here, because pretty much the only point in which these activities he is mentioning, specifically here, love and rhyme, are supposed to be these pleasant and activities full of pleasure, but they become able to turn into boredom and tiredness at the point in which it becomes a commodity. So it is a very unfortunate thing that the our insertion into this, and I realized this is a very Han topic to talk about. Byung-Chul Han is very much up his alley, in which it occurs this kind of inversions in this commodified systems, in which the things that are supposed to give us pleasure, be it love, as Belloc is mentioning here, turn into boredom, and the things which we're not supposed to find happiness in, such as money, actually do become that.
I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it. The best way to understand Han is to read him as a neo-distributist or a crypto-distributist. His work aligns so well with the complaints about the servile state that Belloc and Chesterton were writing about in their time, that his writing immediately becomes, it's like a key to one. It's like a you guys ever see like on TV shows and movies, they have like the book cipher where you have to find the right book of the right edition just to be able to decode the message. But I feel like Byung-Chul Han is best understood if you read the Belloc and Chesterton works as if they were the key to decoding Han. And not to be a lesson to anyone listening, read some Belloc and Han, then read the Servile State, the Outlines of Sanity, and then Burnout Society, and tell me that's not basically the same concepts. I do actually, because we're talking about fatigue and this concept, there's one more Belloc poem I wasn't going to read, but it does fit the theme, so I'm just going to read it real quick. Is there any reward? Is there any reward? I'm beginning to doubt it. I am broken and bored. Is there any reward? Reassure me, good Lord, and inform me about it. Is there any reward? I am beginning to doubt it.
That's another Belloc classic right there.
It's a good one. I feel about Belloc's poems is that he'll have poems that the only way to classify them would be insult poetry. I mean, his Christmas poem was literally Noel, 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 all my enemies go to hell. His Lines to a Dawn was just a massive like paragraphs of insults against one guy for insulting G.K. Chesterton. He has a whole poem about wishing for the deaths of all heretics and pagans. But then he also has these very thoughtful, moving, somber poems. And then he has the comical children's poems. I mean, there's one on pacifism. It was Bill the pacifist saw it wrong to fight. Warring Bill who killed him saw it right. The range of Belloc's poetry is very impressive. There's never just one type of poem, and it makes him very entertaining on repeated reads.
He has a very impressive range of humors, which makes him excessively human sometimes.
That's also why you'll probably never be a saint.
Yeah.
Listen, loads of people are calling for Chesterton sainthood, for canonization, for photo scenes. As much as I love Belloc, I fully admit he is not a saint. He is one of the famous story that he had a bad knee, and he was in a church, visiting a church, and some random guy saw him sitting down when everyone was standing and leaned down and was like, "Hey, we stand up at this part." And in the church, Belloc was like, "Go to hell! I'm not doing this." Like he started yelling at the guy in the church.
Reasonable crash out.
Yes, he crashed that hard on some people. And this bothers me too. The BBC recorded on the radio several debates he did across his life. They've never uploaded them. And I have sent emails to the BBC. Can you guys please check the archives? I know you have these saved. Let's put them out there on YouTube. I mean, they broadcasted a debate between Chesterton and George Bernard Shaw that was moderated by HILAIRE Belloc. And there's no one's transcripts. We know it was broadcasted. We know it was about newspapers, but they have not released. I know the archives, they have it. They just haven't actually done anything with it. There's so much more Belloc and Chesterton out there that has not been released yet, and it's being held onto in archives.
Honestly, that's just sufficient reason for the invasion of Britain at this point.
Yeah, we just got to go through their archives and take the recording, and we can leave them alone after that.
Well, I say we do that, but we also knock down Stonehenge just because fuck them. You don't get. You
That's
don't
why
get,
we are it.
Why were they? We might as well. I mean, it's not like the British people respect their own heritage anymore anyway.
We're going to knock it down and build an Applebee's.
Yes.
Build a McDonald's on top of it.
I was thinking of this on Stonehenge because it reminded me. I was reading Herodotus, and apparently there's like vague references to Stonehenge in Herodotus, which just makes you wonder how fucking old is that thing? It's I mean, it's so old.
Isn't it pre-Indo-European?
I believe some people say it is.
Like the Neolithic farmers of Britain.
For anyone listening, on the channel, there is like 9 hours of Theata of Mercia, formerly known as Anglo-Libertarian, breaking down English history from Stonehenge. I think we left off with Saxo. So there's a lot there if anyone wants to go back through that and listen to a bunch of stuff on English history from a very knowledgeable Englishman on his own history. I'll put a link to that in the description. But I believe it is maybe that old. It is a ridiculously old structure. Well, we've gone for 60 minutes, and I monopolized so far all of it with Belloc. So let's move into some other poems. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I guess we can roll in this train of things which are very old. And we're talking about a poem called The Myth of Arthur by Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton. So it goes like this. O learned man who never learned to learn, save to the deuce by timid steps and small, from towering smoke that fire can never burn, and from tall tales that men were never tall. Say, have you thought what manner of man it is, of who men say he could strike giants down? Or what strong memories over time's abyss bore up the pomp of Camelot and the crown? And why one banner all the background fills, beyond the pageant of so many spears? And by what witchery in the western hills a throne stands empty for 1,000 years? Who hold, unheeding this immense impact, immortal story for a mortal sin? Lest human fable touch historical fact, chase myths like moths, and fight them with a pin. Take comfort, rest. There is not need this ado. You shall not be a myth, I promise you.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. It feels like he's writing directly to the quote unquote historians who spend more time trying to debunk their own nation's history than actually writing history. Oh, learning men who never learned. That's a great one.
It just strikes me as such a bite into this whole kind of critical this critical approaches to this text who try so much to fix on the minutia of where King Arthur exactly came from, where did he live. I remember seeing sometime, I don't know how far back, but some vague story about how we found the true place of the birth of King Arthur, and it was in Bosnia. And I was like, okay, I guess it was Bosnia.
Bosnia mentioned?
Yeah,
you ever been to Bosnia, son?
so yeah, guys, that's probably not it. And Chesterton points out to how by focusing down, people forget to look at the heights, and they don't realize what made this type of stories be so elevated amongst all of the ancient men, because there is this hubris of the modern man to think all the ancients were stupid and all his ancestors were stupid, and to think that people back then didn't know that maybe some stuff of this King Arthur legend is fabricated, but they still preserved it, and
Mhm.
often it feels that people don't realize why it was preserved, because these stories talk about some of the heights of human experience which can't be easily translated into everyday activity.
I have a coworker who's very much of the opinion that ancient man was dumb, and he said that to me the other day. And I said, "Okay, go make Greek fire. Explain Greek fire to me. Explain the Romans self repairing concrete. Or you can't. Maybe they knew more than you did.
Yeah,
It's
it's like I honestly stuff like this seems like this like the Arthurian legend and stuff like that is more true than we found like the bones of this one guy here, so this might be like it like stories like that better represent reality in some ways. And something that I have thought a lot about to do with King Arthur, it talks about it in this poem about like that, like his like throne being empty. And they say that like in the story it says he's going to come back one day,
yes.
but different people, like originally the Welsh said that after they were conquered by the Saxons or the Anglo-Saxons, that King Arthur was going to drive the Anglo-Saxons out. And then when the Normans conquered England, the Anglo-Saxons said King Arthur was going to come back and drive them out. And
I swear to
they-
God, if I see one Sikh saying King Arthur's going to drive the English out, I'm going to lose it.
no, he needs that. Probably should be the other way around.
It needs to be.
I
It's just-
think the point we're reaching is that these myths talk to us, and what Perkins said, and I think he's 100% right on why these stories sound more true than our actual histories, is because they speak to us in a much more holistic level, and they dialogue directly into our experience as humans, and not merely as atomized humans, which can be dissected through scientific study. And I guess this is a very Byung-Chul Han way of putting things, but it's also Heideggerian because he was a big Heidegger student. But this whole contextualization of the human being and his experience according to his view of his ancestry and the origin of his people uh, speaks much more deeply to us than merely scientific migration patterns. It is one thing to talk about, the Germanic migrations as a historical fact, and the other as to talk it in a matter of identity. And the thing you guys pointed out about King Arthur returning uh, is also very symbolic of that. It talks on a symbolic level where we can associate it, for instance, with the coming of Christ. And so you integrate your heritage with your religion, and you get a whole worldview. And that's what fundamentally upholds culture, not just a coincidence of historical fact.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the critical method applied to history here when it comes to like people like King Arthur or legendary figures or legendary moments of history, and it reminded me of this great quote from Pope Benedict. I want to say it was the 16th, was the most recent Pope Benedict. I think he said it when he was still Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. He said the critical Methodists are critical of everything but their own critical method. Which is I've always found to be a very astute statement regarding the hyper-materialistic deduction model of history. Where it's like, well, how do we deduce this to bare bones facts about everything and remove any narrative? And I think part of that's in its intent is itself a bad idea, given the fact that for the majority of human history was written as a leisure subject by elites, by nobles and elites, to be entertaining to the masses and to other elites. I mean, look at the Romans. The Romans considered history not to be a branch of science or study or philosophy, but a branch of literary entertainment compared to poetry. And so, trying to even deduce historical facts in this very materialistic, critical way, using ancient sources, corrupts what the point of those sources were to begin with.
And they still do that though, just only when they want to, which is like when they want to make Helen of Troy a Congolese woman or something like that.
We can't get into that one. We cannot. We must be here hours, and I'm going to start saying slurs. Okay, we can't get into that one. That's
one more thing about the poem, which I think talks to what you just said, Caleb, is that Chesterton is really getting at here about this idea of modern man in this critical approach, focusing down on the small things and missing the big picture. And that leads to one hand a misunderstanding of history, because you're not getting this complete picture of your people. You're just getting isolated bits of historical data. On the other hand, this leads to inevitably you losing your ability to myth make. And Perkyo mentioned that there is this modern attempt at myth making about creating fake history. But we all know this is not going to have the same lasting impact as these stories which have been handed down to us for millennia. We all know this is not going to become myth in the same way that this is what we have is capital M myth. So that's why I think he ended the poem in a brilliant manner in which he says, you guys are so worried about myth and think it's so bad because it's not historically accurate. Don't worry, guys. You're not going to become part of myth.
You're not nearly as cool as he was.
I found this great quote from Chesterton regarding history. I believe what really happens in history is this. The old man is always wrong, and the young people are always wrong about what is wrong with him. The practical form it takes is this, that while the old man may stand by some stupid custom, the young man always attacks it with some stupid theory that turns out to be equally stupid.
That perfectly describes pretty much all issues now.
Let me see, there was a great quote. Let me see if I can find it. Short history of England, Chesterton. He wrote a short history of the English-speaking people. Short history of England from G.K. Chesterton. He had an opening quote here. I thought it was really good. Let me see if I can find it. I'm not going to be able to find it in time, but one of the quotes he had, I'm going to paraphrase it. It is more important to recognize that King Arthur marched on the Saxons than it is to deduce what road he took to the battle. Exactly. Which I think is exactly the point.
It's just not missing the forest for the trees or whatever the saying is. It's hitting those high notes of history instead of getting lost in the minutiae or the cul-de-sacs.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's weird how their approach changed. Like, it has definitely changed since Chesterton's day, because it feels like people who were overly skeptical of myths back then just really wanted to be objective and empirical. I think the reason the majority of the historians do it now is just because they hate themselves and they hate the people they came from. They just want to cut it down. And without any kind of objective thing. That's why they do all the modern stuff that they do.
What was the name of the bits who I will say bits because he's not a lady. What was the name of the bits who recently translated the Iliad? What was the name?
I can't remember her name, but that's the one that the Christopher Nolan movie is based on, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Emily Wilson.
Wait, it is?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I know. Anyone listening, just two. I'll give it this way. There's two academics ones that always avoid. Clearly Emily Wilson. I believe the second one's name is Mary Bird or Bird. I mean, it's just Mary. What's the name? She wrote a bunch of Roman history. History. Let me just find her name real quick. Mary Beard. She is a renowned Cambridge classicist focused on Roman history, but everything he writes ought to be ignored because, we talked about how after Solidsville, wanted to make her and her colleagues made sure to stress the fact that old marble statues were painted as a means to deter white supremacists, as if white supremacists loved the classical word only because the marble statues were white.
I think she kind of misunderstood why.
Yeah, it was the dumbest thing I've ever. I saw it. I'm like, if people take her seriously, I heard her books were assigned reading in one of my history classes. No, this is not a serious person.
Yeah, like I don't think that people like marble statues just because that completely missed the point of like she. Not only is she a subversive, but she's really bad at it because she doesn't know who she's subverting.
And isn't that the most demoralizing part of modernity? Is that the enemy of truth isn't even clever. They're just really stupid, but it doesn't matter how stupid they are because they have a credential next to their name. People listen to them anyway. That is the most demoralizing thing about modernity. Is people like Sam Harris. Crap, what was his name? So I'm googling a lot of people's names this time because I'm trying to more accurately call out these dumbasses. The Case Against Reality. That's what the book. Who wrote it? Donald Hoffman. Okay, anyone listening? Donald Hoffman is a renowned philosopher, quote unquote, and scientist whose entire argument is that evolution would not have evolved our eyes to show us everything that currently exists. It would evolve only to show us what was necessary for our survival. And therefore, because of evolution, you can't trust reality as you see it because it's not what you're actually seeing. You're only seeing what is evolutionarily beneficial.
That contradicts itself because
yes,
you can't trust your own judgment about that.
Exactly. And then when asked to prove it, his argument is, well, I ran a bunch of mathematical formulas and numbers. And I'm like, but you have to look at those with your eyes. Like you're immediately, it's dumber than even like Cartesian skepticism or pure Kantian, what's the word they use? A priori reasoning. It's even dumber than that. It's just like, you can't trust your eyes, but don't worry, you could trust my eyes to tell you can't trust your eyes. It's like, yes, why do these people get grants to write this stuff? It's ridiculous. They're on serious academics anyway. I think after Roger Scruin and Alistair McIntyre died, the only serious academics left are like Priest and Ed Fazo. It's quite disappointing.
I wish I could be more charitable and think they are misguided, but I think they're just evil, plainly.
Yes. Absolutely.
Did y'all hear about, I don't want to did y'all see the thing about the paper that came out where these two scientists were arguing that they need to genetically engineer the Lone Star tick to spread more because it spreads that thing where it makes you allergic to meat?
I did see this. And C.S. Lewis was right. Scientists are evil. There's no way around it. The scientists are absolutely evil. Quick poll for the group here. Who's worse, scientists or lawyers?
That's a very tough question.
I think scientists, because even at least the lawyers aren't pretending like what they're arguing for is objective.
I'm just going to break your question and say journalists.
Speaking of journalists, I gotta bring, every time someone mentions journalists on the podcast, I can't help but bring up the story. There's a great quote from Søren Kierkegaard, Dutch Protestant philosopher / theologian. And he said, if my own daughter was a prostitute, I would pray day and night for her return to the face and always welcome her back with open arms. But if my son became a journalist, I would disown him.
Reasonable.
What's ultimate question? Sought daughter or journalist son?
That's even worse. Dang. Honestly, you can't recover from that. So
nope. it's all over from there. Gustavo, anyone have anything else they want to say on the Mists of Ossa before we move into the last poem of the night? No? Okay. Pokio, you're up.
All right. I have the The Secret People by Chesterton. Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget, for we are the people of England that have never spoken yet. There's many a fat farmer that drinks less cheerfully. There's many a free French peasant who is richer and sadder than we. There are no folk in this whole world so helpless or so wise. There is a hunger in our bellies and laughter in our eyes. You laugh at us and love us, both mugs and eyes are wet. Only you do not know us, for we have not spoken yet. The fine French kings came over in a flutter of flags and dames. We liked their smiles and battles, but we could never say their names. The blood ran down to Bosworth. The blood ran red down to Bosworth, and the high French lords went down, but it was naught but a naked people under a naked crown. And the eyes of the king's servants turned terribly every way, and the gold of the king's servants rose higher every day. They burnt the homes of the shaven men that had been quaint and kind, till there was no bed in a monk's house, nor food that man could find. The ends of God were no man paid, that were the wall of the weak. The king's servants ate them all, and still we did not speak. And the face of the king's servants grew greater than the king. He tricked them, and they trapped him, and stood around him in a ring. The new brave lords closed round him that had eaten the abbey's fruits, and the men of the new religion with the Bibles in their boots. We saw that their shoulders moving to menace or discuss, and some were pure and some were vile, but none took heed of us. We saw the king as they killed him, and his face was proud and pale, and few men talked of freedom when England talked of ale. While England talked of ale, a war that we understood not came over the world and woke. Americans, Frenchmen, Irish, but we knew not the things they spoke. They talked about rights and nature and peace and the people's reign. And the squires, our masters, bade us fight, and scorned us never again. Weak if we be it forever, could none condemn us then. Men called us serfs and drudges. Men knew that we were men. In foam and flame at Trafalgar, on Albura plains, we did and died like lions to keep ourselves in chains. We lay in living ruins, firing and fearing not. The strange, fierce face of the Frenchmen who knew for what they fought, and the man who seemed to be more than a man we strained against and broke, and we broke our own rights with him, and still we never spoke. Our patch of glory ended. We never heard guns again, but the squire seemed stuck in the saddle. He was foolish as if in pain. He leaned on a staggering warrior. He clutched a cringing Jew. He was stricken, it may be, after all. He was stricken at Waterloo. Or perhaps the shades of shaven men whose spoil is in his house come back in shining shapes at last to spoil his last carouse. We only know the last sad squires rode slowly towards the sea, and the new people takes the land, and still it is not we. They have given us unto the hand of new unhappy lords, lords without anger or honor, who dare not carry their swords. They fight by shuffling papers, and they have bright, dead alien eyes. They look at our labor and laughter as a tired man looks at flies. And the load of their loveless pity is worse than the ancient wrongs. Their doors are shut in the evening, and they know no songs. We hear men speaking for us of new laws of strong and sweet, yet there is no man speaketh as we speak in the street. It may be we shall rise, the last as Frenchmen rose the first. Our wrath come after Russia's wrath, and our wrath may be the worst. It may be we are meant to mark our riot and our rest. God's scorn for all men governing. It may be beer is best. But we are the people of England, and we have not spoken yet. Smile at us, pay us, pass us, but do not quite forget.
Whew, that's a good one. I gotta say, this line here, we hear men speaking of us new laws, strong and sweet, yet there is no man speaketh as we speak in the street. It may be we shall rise as rise the last as Frenchman rose the first. Our wrath come from Russell wrath, and our wrath would be the worst. The Englishman is the Anglos beginning to hate. Was all I could think about when I read that line. The Anglos beginning to hate.
It felt like
Great one.
it felt like he predicted the future with the and a new people takes the land, and still it is not we. I'm trying to I think he was referring to I guess the post-war people, but that has a whole new meaning now.
I think he's referring more to bureaucrats. I think Chesterton. Did he die before World War I or after World War I?
Chesterton? I thought he.
Chesterton's. Yes. 1936. Okay, so we saw. But yeah, man, that's a good one. It does seem very pathetic given the current state of England today.
Yeah, and it's very anti-Norman, and I can understand that. Because the way it. I mean, I hadn't really thought about this too much because, I know he was part of the English movement, the literary thing where they were trying to stop using old French Norman words, or was that C.S. Lewis? I think I can't.
I think there's a lot. Okay, it was the Inklings, but I think Chesterton, he predated that quite a bit. Right. But he was the major inspiration for the Inklings because I think everyone everyone in the Inklings was influenced by Chesterton.
I wouldn't be surprised if he had some kind of those sentiments with something like this, but I never really thought of the continuity between William the Conqueror and Henry VIII destroying the monasteries, and then that there really hasn't been a king that represented England since maybe over 1,000 years, or even 100 years, probably over 100 years before William the Conqueror, because of the Danelaw and stuff like that. And you can and I think there is kind of a tendency you can blame all of the problems on the monarchy, and you can say all the good things came from the people, but I can kind of get that.
I think it's really awesome that Chesterton here basically made a recap from English history in a nice, concise poem, but that he also put it in the eyes of the average peasant. And he contextualizes this through the eyes of the French Revolution and also the Industrial Revolution. So the part in which he says that they're losing the land and the land is no longer theirs, I think it's referring to the commercialization of agriculture, which Chesterton was certainly opposed from his distributist point of view. And what it gets also in the ending of the poem to kind of a prophecy of what it is to come, because the English peasant has been through a lot, right? And this nativist sentiment has experienced the Norman rule, has experienced as you guys mentioned, Henry VIII and the English Civil War and the French Revolution, and then the First World War. And then he mentions that there was the French Revolution, there was the Russian Revolution, and maybe now is the time for the Anglos to rise up. But of course, as every revolution is different from the last one, maybe this time the English peasant who has been silent for so long, maybe his voice will be heard now, but his voice will not be heard in the same way as the Frenchmen who came and turned their land into rivers of blood. Maybe this time what it will look like, it's more as a restoration of the Shire or a retelling of the Arthurian myth. So that's something that I envisioned in this text, and I don't know if you guys agree.
I do.
Yeah.
Actually, look, I want to recommend to anybody listening, check out Chesterton's poem Lepanto, which is a great poem, and of course on the Battle of Lepanto. But also check out his book, A Short History of England by G.K. Chesterton. It's old enough now that it's public domain. You can find free PDFs on Project Gutenberg. It's a very concise, fun, and Chesterton style history of England, and I found it to be very illuminating to understanding the English speaking world and English people in general. So I'll put a link to that in the description as well. Now this is there's a line here I heard earlier I wanted to bring up. Here they burnt the homes of the saving men that had been quaint and kind, till there was no bed in a monk's house, no food that man could find. The ends of God were no man paid. That word of wall of the weak, the king's servants ate them all, and still we did not speak. I mean, clearly that's got to be a reference to the dissolution of the monasteries under, was it Henry VIII? I always want to say, listen, I get Henry V, Charles V, and Henry VIII all mixed up in my head every time. But I mean the not just the physical dissolution of the monuments, but I mean, just imagine the psychic toll on the few Catholics still trying to like persist and hide in anglicized England, and you just see the monasteries just being ripped up out of the ground, destroyed, and all the gold or anything of valuable hauled off, just so Henry could pay to have a very quick war with France, only then to immediately meet the French king and be like, dude, this guy's sick as hell. And they were just like vibed. That's really infuriating. I can't imagine the raids of that, those moments in history.
It's something that this kind of, like, I never really, it is a very different perspective on English history. And it kind of makes you realize that they're really, like, for all the good things that England, like the Anglo-Saxon race has done, there hasn't really been a good, like an excellent king in that, or like the monarchy has kind of always just been restrictive of that. Even when there were like good ones, like Richard, he was famous. Like the good things he did, he didn't even have to do with England at all.
That's what makes him the best English king, is he left.
He spent 6 months of his life in England. He did not speak English, and he was still cool, but like, he was not cool for being the king.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be my hot take. The only great English monarch is Boudica. That's my hot take on English history.
What about the Anglo-Saxon kings, like Alfred and stuff?
I don't know enough about them. Also, from my understanding, they couldn't keep the kingdom without falling to. Granted, they were being hit from every side, whether it be the Vikings or whether it be the Normans or everything. But I will say, everyone listening, at least read, if you're gonna read anything I recommended today, or it's in the descriptions. Chapter 3 of Chesterton's History of England. He goes, first two chapters are kind of like, first chapter is like a little bit about English history. 2 is about the geography. 3, he goes into the Age of Legends, where he says, how did a Roman city go from being Rome and the gods and all that stuff to being like, okay, there's trolls and fairies in the woods. We still have the roads, but we're going to start seeing fairies in the woods as technology has decreased, or at least the management technology has decreased. I think you're right about the fact that there hasn't been really a good Anglo-Saxon English king. The English monarchy has kind of been I'll say Henry V is one of the greats. That's a huge fan of Agincourt.
Yeah, but it feels like of all the great things they've done, like it was always a hindrance. It was just that it was the Englishman going out and doing things on his own, like founding America and conquering India. Like they kind of went. Sometimes they, like with India, they did not need their help at all. They just kind of went and did it, and then the monarchy had to like take control of it later.
Yeah, the parliamentary system of England is really, it's weird. It's I don't pretend to understand it. The constitutional monarchy that they seem to have going back until centuries. It's a weird. I don't know. England has a weird history, but also one thing I like to keep in mind when it comes to English kings is that one of the oldest alliances in Europe after the fall of Rome, I believe, is the two oldest alliances in Europe were between Britain and Portugal and France and Scots. And it was an agreement that anytime England started mounting up for a war against either one of them, either France would invade from the south if the English started going to the north, and if the English went to the south to attack France, the Scots would attack the north. They kind of kept them wedged between two of them. That was one of the oldest alliances in Europe, was between the French and the Scots. That kind of hindered a lot of the potential of the monarchy to actually do much of anything.
I know I'm kind of biased, but I do really like the Stuart kings. I know they have been very slandered by history and especially by parliamentarians, but we in this house we stand James the First and James the Second. All right. I also wanted to talk about the poem, specifically about how Chesterton links all these bad rulers which England had, and this is basically a silent majority versus bad government kind of deal which is going on in the text. And I like how he specifically ties all the bad rulers from English history to the modern bureaucrats. So when he says they have given us into the hand of new unhappy lords without anger or honor, who dare not carry their swords. So we have gone away from the more direct tyrants who just directly oppress the peasants, sometimes with the direct physical punishment. But we have moved on for those whose, I think he says that their weapons are paper or something like that. Yeah, they fight by shuffling paper. So we are still under the tyranny. It just changed form. So it also is helpful to dispel the myth of the great enlightenment and the great so-called freedoms, which have turned out not to be freedom at all, at least from the perspective of the English peasant, right? The silent, the secret people, as he put it.
Okay, so we're one up on the hour. We're going to go a little bit long this time because I really think we're going to get a lot of great stuff out of the first little bit of Belloc's outline against H.G. Wells. But I do want to add on the topic of the bureaucrats and the effects of the Enlightenment in England. This poem actually pairs really well with an essay from Belloc on the Free Press. I'll put a link to that in the description as well for anyone who wants to check that out, because it pairs very well with this poem. And we don't have time to go into it because we have another one to read, but I will be sure to add that to the description. Okay. Are you guys ready to go into the Mr. Belloc Objects reading? I'll take the silence as a yes because you're both muted.
Yeah, my earbuds just died. Let me fix that real quick.
No problem. We'll wait a little bit. While we do that, I'm going to get another drink.
I just want to say, for the record, that I really don't like H.G. Wells.
Who does, honestly? I've never met a single person who liked H.G. Wells.
I guess people can like some of his literary work, but as a person, I think he's basically insufferable.
I swear, the English produced the absolute worst academics or intellectuals, because Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells, and what was that guy's name? He was oh my God, what was his name? Whitehead. Was it Whitehead? Whitehead Metaphysics.
If it's Process and Reality, it's Whitehead. Alfred Whitehead,
yes.
Right?
Yes, Alfred Whitehead. I recently found out about him, and I looked into him a bit and tried to understand him, and I'm like, you know what? This is why the church declares certain things anathema and executes people.
This is why you guys can't have nice things.
Exactly. Listen, the church. I can't remember. I think it was Bokokov on Twitter. He was talking about the Albigensians, and someone said the church is genocidal because it genocide the Albigensians, and he was like, "Yeah, but did you ever read them? They had to fucking go, dog."
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's justified it. I was like, yeah, they did. They had to go.
There is this. This is one of those chapters in history in which you see all the brutality and in which you're like, I mean, the Kafirs really deserved it, honestly.
They did. They had to go. They had to go.
The Kafirs were one of the most degenerate groups I ever heard of.
Yes, it's okay. So I got my brandy. I got a Seagram's Escape, Jamaican me happy. Let me pop the top. Perkio, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
This is so. I'll give a quick history of this. H.G. Wells wrote a book on history called The Outlines of History. To which HILAIRE Belloc wrote a pamphlet responding to it called Mr. Belloc Objects to the Outlines of History, which was then often sold right next to H.G. Wells' book in bookstores. So H.G. Wells wrote a satirical piece attacking Belloc. I believe it was titled Mr. Belloc Objects. To which Belloc responded with, Mr. Belloc still objects, where he continued the arguments. And that is what we're going to be reading from today. We're just going to read the quick, here you go. Mr. Wells' general grievances. I cannot pretend in so short a pamphlet has to deal with all the separate lamentations with which Mr. Wells has filled the air, but I can state the principle of them and try to make him understand how wrong-headed he is in his objections. Of course, these general points, the first and perhaps most important, is that when he refused a right of reply on page 5 of his pamphlet, he distinctly insinuates that I was afraid of hearing his reply and had it suppressed, for he says that the editor of the paper in which my articles appeared would not give him his opportunity, and that he is so refused after a various consultations with Mr. Belloc. As to the space which he offered, and the exceptional facilities which I understand were granted to his angry men, the editor must, of course, speak for himself, and has, I believe, done so. But as to the part in which I took, it can be stated very simply. I was told by the editor, who had asked to see me on this matter, that Mr. Wells desired to reply in the same column in which he had been criticized. I was asked what my attitude was on the matter, and I affirmed in the strongest fashion, to which the editor witnessed my belief that the fullest right of reply should always be given to anyone criticized on matter of fact or judgment. The interview did not last 10 minutes, but to give record of my attitude, I wrote a strong and clear letter to the same effect. So far as I am concerned, I asked for nothing better than a reply, and I believe the editor offered it. Of two things. One is that Mr. Wells knew my attitude, and what's his case is insinuation is inexcusable. Or he did not, in which case he is only rash. But at any rate, he is, in this first grievance of his, quite wrong. I particularly wanted him to have every opportunity for reply. Nothing could suit me better. Next, he complains I have not given him sufficient praise, or at any rate, not praised him as continuously, highly, and enthusiastically as I ought to have done. He complains that I only give him slow and formal compliments and partisan praise. He is wounded because I accuse him of violent antagonism to the Catholic Church, an accusation which he denies very earnestly. He indignantly this is why I have a hard time with Edwardian literature. Everyone tried to be like Thomas Carlyle and very verbose. And there's a writing style that does not exist anymore. And so it takes a little while to get into it, but you can find my spot again. He indignantly repudiates any bias against the gentry in history, which social class I ask him to reveal. Lastly, he accuses me of using such terms about many passages in history as ignorant, childish, confused. I am afraid it is necessary, before touching on these grievances, to explain to Mr. Wells what criticism is, for it is clear that he has never considered the nature of that literary function. He's cooking his ass. I mean, there's so many little snide comments here.
Yeah, he's just wiping the floor with him at this point.
Yes. I am afraid it is necessary, before touching on these grievances. When you criticize the writings of a man who deals with definite facts and conclusions to be drawn from them, and it is your business to praise what is praiseworthy in its effort and to condemn what is insufficient, false, or bad, you do not praise, if you are a serious critic, simply as a sort of sop or counterbalance to blame. You praise because you find things worthy of praise, and you blame where you find things worthy of blame. There is nothing oily or patronizing or even advantageous and artificial in the praise which I saw fit to offer. It was not vague, it was very definite. And I think this, moreover, it was very strong praise of which any writer might be proud at the hands of a colleague. I praised Mr. Wells' lucidity and economy of manner, his sense of proportion, and above all, the most remarkable talent for presenting a vivid picture to the reader. In these, my words were none of your contemporaries possess it, the gift of lucid and vivid description, in anything like the same degree. In other words, I said that he possessed the talents of most important literary kind which any writer would envy, and he possessed it to a degree which made him superior to any contemporary. I also said he was conspicuously sincere when he wrote very clearly, was an excellent economy in the use of words, and was unreserved in my hearty appreciation of his accuracy and detail of reference, such as dates, spelling of names, etc. I went on to say I very strongly felt the importance of history to mankind, though it is true that I qualified this by saying that by mankind he meant only the sort of mankind he knew. I said of his history of purpose that it was a quality apparent in every line of the work. Really, it is a sort of thing as oiliness. Mr. Wells must be very difficult to please. He must be slow. It is not a torrent of undiscriminating adulation. It is mixed with justified blame. But it is such a catalogue of remarkable literary powers as I would not make for another writer. I did much more than this. I specifically praised the whole portions of the book, as well as quite excellent, notably the handling of the story of language and precise many sections of history. I have no space here to give a list of the passages in which I would compliment, but they are numerous, and many of my readers will see them in my book or comparison to Mr. Wells' outlines shall appear. But he is not satisfied, and I aim at the truth. I am afraid the truth must be that recent large popular circulations of what have gone to his head have now made him think of himself as much more talented than he is. Next, he has a grievance, which I have no doubt is quite sincere in his own mind, but which any impartial observer, I think, would smile at. And I have said that he acts as violent antagonism to the Catholic Church, and I have called his motive, that is the motive of Mr. Wells, earnestly denies. Well, the whole book is written quite clearly around the object of convincing the reader, the so-called evidence rather than reasoned argument, that there is no design in nature, and therefore no powerful creator. God is the author of nature. Therefore, again, no revelation of such a God to men, and therefore, naturally, no question of the incarnation of Jesus Christ. The atonement is man-made nonsense. The fall of man never happened. The resurrection is a foolish story, and the Eucharist is make-believe. Now, what body is it which maintains in their entirety the doctrine just attacked? Can anyone deny this is the Catholic Church? That's pretty funny. Just reading this, realizing it, but I was like, it was like, no, I'm not being anti-Catholic. I'm just anti these specific Christian doctrines, which are clearly found in the Catholic Church.
I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm just anti everything about Catholicism. It's like the people that say, like, I mean, a lot of people still kind of act like that, where it's like they don't have a problem with the vague idea of Christianity, but anytime Christianity like means anything, they have a problem with it.
It's also the thing where you want to criticize a belief, but you don't want to go to the full extent of the criticism which that belief entails. You want the critique, but you don't want the consequences of the critique. So Wells think he can just retreat to the safe critiques of deism, where God is just this impersonal being. I don't know exactly how Wells stands religiously, if he's just a full-blown atheist, a deist, or whatnot. But he thinks he can retreat to the comfortable position and not directly say he is attacking the strict dogma of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, so far I'm reading this and I'm like, man, the left-right debates have not changed much. This is it's reads
really
like it reads like a Twitter thread between two people beefing on Twitter, trying to explain why they're beefing.
Wasn't he a Fabian?
H.G. Wells? Look that up.
Yeah.
H.G. Wells.
I wouldn't
Fabian.
be surprised, honestly.
Yep. He was a prominent British author who joined the Socialist Fabian Society in 1903.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, he apparently he resigned in 1908 after he got into a beef with Judge Bernard Shaw. I respect Shaw. I'm sure he's wrong about a lot of things. I never read him, but he seemed to have he was friends with G.K. Chesterton, and they had multiple debates. And the thing was Belloc, and so I respect him as a guy who could, keep up, argue, and still be friends with those two guys. So respect to Shaw, no respect to Wells. But let's continue. To anyone deny that this is the Catholic Church, many of them have been held by other bodies, schismatical or heretical to it, but therefore the doctrines are often alluded to as these, not of the Catholic Church, but as a vague entity impossible to define called quote-unquote Christianity. Nevertheless, we all know that the denial today of those doctrines does not provoke determined resistance from any large organized body outside the Catholic Church. Apart from this, there are expressions of contempt which quite clearly show the rabidness of the author's reactions against the creed. There is no doubt at all that the church makes him see red, so he does not, as so many others. Hold on. Here. He says he is not conscious of any such motive in attacking the prime dogmas of the Christian faith. Well, I will give him a parallel. Suppose a foreigner were to write an outline of the 19th century history, and it said that the islanders were always rascals, that the love of sport and games was degraded, and particularly vicious, and that football and cricket, as the English language, was an offensive vehicle of sort and had preceded nothing worthy but sea power was amiss, and that Nelson in particular was a bungler at handling ships, and that the administration of India was a failure and a crime, and that the creation of large overseas colonies from the mother country was a famous experiment. So we not say this gentleman had some bias against England?
Well, at least we don't see this today. Nobody makes this argument.
Absolutely. Well, he did tell us. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say there is a lot of veiled hate where people just pretend to dislike a bit of one's culture, but they really just hate them in their entirety.
Mhm.
But yeah, go on.
They hide their ethnic hatred behind the veil of complexity. Well, it's a really complex issue. It's like, yeah, you only say it's complex when you push back, and that really does bother me, the liberal retreat into complexity. It's like, just because it's complex doesn't mean you can't answer it. Quantum physics is complex, yet you think that explains the universe. It's so dishonest. I really am just fed up with the dishonest tactics of left-wing of thought. It's so slippery. It's so dishonest. It's not even excitingly dishonest. It's not like a guy giving you a crazy bullshit lie and you go, you know what? I'm going to go along with the lie because it's just kind of entertaining at this point, just to feed into his delusions. It's not even entertaining lies. It's pathetic.
And I think it is because they are mostly speaking, trying to demoralize their opponent, because we see this a lot in colonization studies. Because for the in-group or for the esoteric message is white man bad, white man evil, but the exoteric message, or the message they try to get into universities or the media or the press and whatnot, is that, colonial systems were bad, and there was this historic economic oppressions and systems and whatnot, this very vague language which assigns stuff to systems. But deep down, there is this ethnic resentment and this real hate, which isn't talked about openly, as you said.
I'm currently in a email exchange with a professor regarding a discussion group. We had to do a discussion group on slavery, and I pointed out that the Americas only purchased the slaves as it was Jewish Dutch traders who owned the slave ships. But that's getting my comment deleted.
Yeah.
Which is I will say I have so much fun in college just kind of trolling the professor. We had to do an introduce yourself discussion group, and it was like your name, your major, what are you good at, what are you not good at, what is your favorite thing to do, what are your goals for this class? And I put, I'm good at following instructions, I'm not good at discussing groups, my favorite thing to do is not say personal details about my life, and my goal for this class is to pass. And the professor said I wasn't fully engaging in it. And I said, well, I followed your instructions. And like I said, I'm good at that. But also, like I said, I'm bad at discussing groups. So you really can't be mad at me for not doing good. I told you I wasn't going to do good at it. But she's not finding that as funny as I hoped she would.
Is that the same one you emailed about the Jewish slave ships?
No, that's the one it's a different one. I'm arguing with my wellness techniques about the dry deadpan one. I'm arguing with the history professor about the Jewish slave ships.
Do you have like a resource for that? I've heard stuff about that. I couldn't find any. Like, I'm still don't know what I think about that because I can't find any. Like,
yeah, they've done a very good job hiding that. I've only found it from esoteric like Twitter threads that have some sites in the comments.
I know this is very niche knowledge, but there is a book from the Nation of Islam about it. Don't ask me how I know.
Yakub always comes in clutch like that.
Shout out to all my homies in the Nation of Islam.
Malcolm X.
This podcast is a huge defender of Malcolm X. Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey are the black Chesterton and Belloc. I said it.
Wow, this really has gone to some direction.
I'm dead ass. Read Marcus Garvey and then read HILAIRE Belloc and tell me they're not basically the same guy. It's quite funny how the parallel between them is. It's again the Pan-Africanists are very much Pan-Africanism is the black people, what distributism is the English people. It's the same scheme. That's a whole conversation to have hours about talking about, but we'll save that for later.
I had a thing, like I was thinking about something to do with Malcolm X earlier, but I don't think I should talk about it on on something you're about to post on YouTube. So
we will save that for after we go out because I have a lot to say about Malcolm X. I'm trying to get somebody to sit down and actually do a reading of Malcolm X with me because I think he had a lot of great ideas. Especially after he came back from Mecca, post his trip to Mecca, he came back and one of his things was he came back and this is where I think he actually was completely right. He said the white man and the black man can coexist together, but only if they are bound together under the common rule of a religion, and that religion must be Islam. And I'm like, you're so close, buddy. You're so close. Islam translates to submit, and you want all races to equally submit to Islam, but that won't work because submission has proven by your own people's history does not last forever. But you know what does last forever? Something universal. What does Kazakh stand for again? Oh, that's right, universal. So he was so close. He was so close to having like the exact solutions.
And he was so consistent too. Like he was like he didn't have all the like everything he said. He 100% believed him. He did not play games like MLK did. I hate MLK so much.
Same.
I don't know why they teach us about him. I don't know why they teach us about him in school and not Malcolm X. Because
he was a pacifist. That's the only reason. That's why he is favored.
I hate MLK way more than you guys.
Yeah.
Again, there's a whole. Anyone listening, go read Sam Francis's essay on MLK Day. It's a wonderful essay, and I think I might need to do a live reading of that. Oh yeah, Sam Francis wrote a great essay about Samuel T. Francis wrote an essay about the modern deification of MLK. Where one of the things he says is America only has feast days celebrating George Washington and Jesus relating to Easter and Christmas and President's Day. But for some reason, MLK gets his own holiday, which puts him on the same level as Washington and Jesus Christ. It's a very good argument.
I really need to get hands on this text because I really appreciate some MLK hate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we're going to call it here because there's so many other things in this. This is a very long response from Belloc. I do want to read one line from it. I just got to find it real quick. Where was it? Yes, the third mark against Mr. Wells's outburst against me, I have called this among the ignorance upon the Catholic Church. The ignorance is, of course, still more apparent in his book, but I am concerned here only with the way in which it appears in his pamphlet. He inherits the old prejudice, flourishing strongly against the no popery days. For some unexplained reason, a Catholic is opposed to that most interesting intellectual activity, the pursuit of physical knowledge. He envisages the Catholic Church's teaching an incoherent heap of unconnected doctrines, each of them highly concrete, each of them flagrantly impossible, and the chief among them the historical statement that in particular places and in particular time, to wit in the neighborhood of Baghdad 5,930 years ago, there took place the fall of man. He has no conception that we object to a book like his and to his message, such as he uses them, because we use the human reason, and all are brought up to know that the human reason is absolute in its own sphere. Exactly the same habit of clear thinking, which makes us know the limitations of reasons and makes us accept a mystery, gives us an admiration of the divine gift of reason of man and the concept of people who, like Mr. Wells, has never been trained to use it, and flounders the moment they try to think hard. Damn, he's good. This whole line here. For instance, nowhere Mr. Wells' intellectual weakness more apparent than his inability to understand what is meant by a fixed type or general form. He meets it with the dear old fallacy that which has been known for more than 2,000 years under the name of sorties. I may inform Mr. Wells that this is not the name of a disease of the body, but of the intelligence. It consists in always asking, where do you draw the line, and trying to put, and on the pretense of trying to avoid definition. Anyone listening, go read this. It's incredible. I'll put a link to it in the description because it's just so good.
Honestly, I just hate the materialist conception of history so much. It's fun seeing it taken down.
It is. But I think that's all the time we have for today. Any final thoughts, you guys? Any final thoughts from the poems or from H.G. Wells or from Belloc or from anything else we talked about?
Well, I just want to thank you guys. I have had a blast. It's always fun to discuss Chesterton and Belloc and all of the other guys, and it's great. And as I always say in the poetry corner, these are some kind of spaces you don't usually get nowadays. And we are, if we're going to bring back Byung-Chul Han, which is basically the the third character here in this episode. We live in an age where we just stuck on social media and chat apps and whatnot, and every discussion is just a information which doesn't hold a lot of weight. So to have these kind of places where you can sit down with people and directly talk to them is a very important thing. And to you guys also watching this, know that by being part of this such a niche community, you are part of something much more special and direct. And I encourage you guys to comment and to interact, because it really is something great which we have here, and don't take it for granted, right? So yeah, just wanted to thank you guys, and it was an awesome episode.
It was. Buckio, final thoughts?
Yeah, I had a good time. I always have a good time with these. And I've learned a lot from doing this kind of thing. And I've gotten more, like I usually, when I'm reading stuff like this, I just I don't really have anybody to talk to about it. So that is autistic as I am. So it's good to be able to bounce stuff off people like this.
It is. It really is. This is the big value of. This is actually why people make a lot of jokes about like the moment a white guy turns 19, he gets a podcasting equipment handed to him. But it's, and I was thinking about this the other day. Like, why is podcasting so big amongst young white guys today? And it's for a very simple reason: pubs don't exist anymore. We don't have places to actually congregate and have these kind of conversations, and so podcasting has kind of filled the niche of the conversation space. And I love hosting these. I love having you guys on. I love talking poetry. I love talking Chesterton and Belloc. Again, hopefully more episodes will come out more consistently in the future. But as for now, you guys listen to the listeners. You get them when you get them. Go back and check the old one. Check out the Substack. Again, my DMs are always open on Twitter. I love taking questions. I love talking to you guys. So if anyone wants to reach out for any reason, hit me up. But I think I'm going to end with a quote from G.K. Chesterton that I have always found to be illuminating and inspiring, and then we'll hit the end stream. Fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed. And with that, we'll have an end the stream. Again, thank you both for coming on. Everyone, have a good night, and God bless.
Our hour together has drawn to a close. We hope the ChesterBelloc Hour has left you with thoughts to ponder and a heart a little lighter. Thanks for listening. Until next time, we wish you a restful night and a bright tomorrow. Good night.